Hey, Neeltje, thank you for coming in. You have a remarkable background, a contribution, and you continue to do so and making such a big impact for good across the cities in Europe. And thank you for coming in and sharing your experiences with our audience.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So, Neeltje, can you describe maybe two or three inflection points in your life that were really kind of inspirational or defining moments for you? And it could have been when you're 3 or 5 years old, or could have been inside outside the family, could have been inside outside school, maybe early career moves,
Yeah.
but those things that really defined what you do today.
Yes. Well, that's not very difficult because when I was 16 years old, I got a scholarship for an international school, which is part of a movement called United World College, and this organization um, gathers youngsters, teenagers from all over the world and they do their last 2 years of secondary school together without their parents in a foreign country usually, um, and well, spend these 2 years together with just people their own age from countries from all over the world. And what the organization hopes is that this fosters international understanding. And it was a great experience for me. And I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to go there. And it definitely had a lot of influence on the way I see the world and the way that's.
So that was do you have any others, or that was really a big defining moment for you?
I would say that was the main defining moment. Yes.
So this ability then to go to this international school and selected to do this program and just meeting people from around the world and taking education with them really opened your eyes about the global community and the diversity that's there and the tremendous talent that's available globally. And then also understanding other people's perspective. It's kind of like this theory of mind idea, understanding the other. And the more diverse that experience, then it is a catalyst for you to think in broader terms, I guess, and be more inclusive and diverse in your thinking.
But I must
So,
say, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you asked whether there were other moments, and I actually could say that, like in my career so far, until 2 years ago, I did not really do anything with this experience. Of course, it's always in me and it influences how I do everything in life, but it wasn't really part of my job. And 2 years ago, while working for the city of Amsterdam at the Department of Innovation, I was asked to become a project manager of this European project, Communicity. And that's, I think in my career, that was quite defining because I really, really like working on this project, and it's the first time in my working life that I do something that really matches this important experience from when I was 16. So these two things match, and they are both very important for me, I think.
Okay, so let's go chronologically though. So you're in school, you get this opportunity to go to this international program, and it defines your global perspective and understanding other cultures and how people think and respecting that. But you also studied media philosophy and sociology. So can you talk about that experience and how did you study media philosophy and sociology?
I find it hard to explain much about that. It was just at the University of Amsterdam. I studied these different subjects, and in the end, I graduated in film and television and sociology, and I had quite different jobs and in my life. And I first worked as an information analyst for ING Bank, which is quite different from both sociology and film and television, but it wasn't so easy to find a job in film and television when I had just graduated, and I was impatient and I wanted to make my own money. So I thought, well, then I can also do something else. And it was interesting, I think. It was analytically, I mean, I liked the analytical part of the job, but after a while I started my own video production company. And that actually started with a video on homeless, or not homeless children, but children who spend most of their times in the streets in Peru and Bolivia. And I made this video for an association working with them. And then after a while, I stopped working at ING and just worked for my own video production company. Then after a while, I worked for the Dutch national documentary channel, but that was the whole channel was cancelled after a while, and then I decided that I could do the kind of analytical work I did at ING, but not for an organization like ING, but for organizations that would be more suitable, that would be more in my line of that would suit me more. And I found an IT consultancy organization that works with municipalities and NGOs mostly, and I worked for them for a while. And then after that I found this job at the Municipality of Amsterdam, and I have been living in Amsterdam for a very long time myself, and I really like the idea of working for my own city.
So I'm going to recap then. You're curious, you're interested in media and philosophy and so on, and you go to this international school and you find it really awakening for you. And then in university, you study media philosophy and sociology, and that was your interest, but you find that, gee, it's really difficult to get a job in those areas. So you end up working as an information analyst at ING, which would be interesting. It'd be a very data-centric kind of role, right?
Not really data-centric. It was more about the user requirements, things like that. I had to interview people and find out what they needed from their IT systems.
Right. So you're looking at user requirements as an information analyst for their information technology systems, but you're still finding that your media philosophy sociology background is pulling on you. So you become editor-in-chief of the Dutch public documentary channel, NPO Doc, which would be an interesting sort of outlet because you have this background and you did this nationally aired documentary in iPad schools, and that had a social impact side of it. And then you work as an IT consultant at Sauveteers. And so there's that IT side in there again, which is sort of related to your ING work, but you also did this documentary work, which is the media side, and then the Dutch public documentary channel, which has this kind of media and sort of the broader sociology philosophy part. And then you end up now working at the Municipality in Amsterdam as a project manager in the Department of Innovation. So what is the objective of being a project manager at the Department of Innovation? What does that job mean?
Well, at the Municipality of Amsterdam, we try to find out what innovations can be useful to benefit the citizens of Amsterdam. And we want to use new possibilities, but we also think a lot about the ethical part of it. And the city of Amsterdam is quite is really invested in that, actually. And they also started the Cities Coalition for Digital Rights in 2018 together with Barcelona and New York. And the city of Amsterdam cares a lot about responsible IT. They also created something called an algorithm registry, in which they want to put all the algorithms they use and So people, well, because I think transparency is is an important value, and this registry is now being copied by nationally. So the city of Amsterdam really likes to be innovative and use new technologies, but they are very aware of the possible risks. And I think it's really important that if you use such things, that they are inclusive and non-discriminatory, and that they bring benefits to all your citizens and not just to the people who are already well off, things like that. So I think, very, I really like this idea, this way, of this vision of technology and innovation.
So Amsterdam has a really progressive point of view, right? They realize that digital inclusion, the use of digital technologies, the associated algorithms associated with the use of digital technologies will have benefits, but also there's risks. So they're very mindful of the risks. And so they create a registry of algorithms so people, so they're transparent. In other words, you could search that registry and say, hey, these are the different kinds of way that digitization of the municipality is being implemented in Amsterdam, and it becomes a model for the country. So now that concept is being modeled throughout the country. But because you worked with other cities on the digital aspects, then really your experience and your work is really being modeled globally. So I think that's really fascinating. So you must be tracking cybersecurity risk as well, right?
I'm sure I've got it. Well, I know I've got it to deal with that, but not me. Really, it's a rather big department.
Right. So within the Department of Innovation, you'd have, or within that program of digitization, you'd have cybersecurity experts, and that'd be another department, or you may have an AI specific maybe department as well.
Yeah. We don't.
So yeah, so you have different specialties, and then your specialty is kind of the innovation side, any kind of things that are very
and
innovative.
I do not really have, this is not, well, I'm working on this European project now, and I've been working on it for 2 years now, and full time. So, and this project is really about fostering development of tech solutions for and with marginalized people. So in the past 2 years, I've been working exclusively on this topic.
Okay, so your project manager in the Department of Innovation for Amsterdam, and now you are on a EU, European Union project, Community City, and it's close to your heart. And as you mentioned, it's fostering the development of tech solutions for marginalized groups and cities across Europe. So is that Community City program, is that, are you still in your role with the project manager at the Department of Innovation, or is this a new role outside of that?
Like, if you work for the Department of Innovation at the City of Amsterdam as a project manager, you get projects to manage. And I happen to get this European project, and that's what I do now. But when the project is over, 1 year from now, I will get a different project to manage. And actually, in the next year, I will probably get a smaller project on the side, because this is, well, we are going towards the end now. We have just launched our last open call for Community City, and there will be less work for me in the next year within this Community City projects. So I'll slowly start working on a different project for the City of Amsterdam.
So this Community City program, which is right across Europe, and because you're a project manager with this leading program with Amsterdam, you were assigned into this Community City project, and it's from 2023 to 2025. So you're nearing the end of the project. And what instigated this project? What instigated this project about the development of tech solutions and in co-creation with marginalized groups and cities across Europe? What does that mean? There's some really kind of big ideas in there, but what does that mean?
What does it mean? Well, it was started by different partners that are now working together in the consortium, but they I think 12 partners together wrote this project proposal that they sent to the EU, and that was funded by the Horizon Europe Framework Program of the EU. But what does it mean? Well, there are several things. So we want to foster the development of tech solutions for marginalized groups, and we didn't define the word marginalized group. In the beginning of the project, we were thinking, well, what do we mean by that, or what groups do we mean, or should we make a list of groups? But then we thought that's not necessary or not really useful, because I think, well, the way I see it is that any group that has somehow a disadvantage in society or in life can be part of these projects. And we do not really need to make a list to start. It's just any group that has a difficulty or some disadvantage in life. And so we have been working with very diverse groups, for example, hearing impaired, or youngsters with a criminal record, or migrants, or people who cannot read well, or people with mental disabilities, or we have worked with very many different groups, and it's also elderly and youngsters. And I think myself that actually everyone will be part of such a group at some point in their lives. And of course, you may be part of several groups there may be several reasons for people to have some disadvantage at some point in their life. And so that's the groups that we work with. They're very diverse groups. And is that all you wanted to know, or should I explain more about the tech development?
So how do you communicate to the different communities out there on this community city program, which is fostering the development of tech solutions in co-creation with marginalized groups? How does a marginalized group raise their hand and say, I want to work with you? How does that happen?
Yes. For this project, the open calls consist of challenges that are formulated by the cities, and then people can send proposals, and in that way apply for a small funding to do a pilot project. And one of my tasks was to think of challenges that would be suitable for this project. And there were several ways in which I did that together with one colleague. And one of the things that probably many people know who work in innovation and in technology is that when you do pilot projects, often there is no follow-up, and you can have a very interesting pilot project and think, well, this was great, and everyone thinks it was something very good what you have been working on. But then after the pilots, it can often be difficult to continue with it because there may be no funds or no resources to continue with it. And because I knew this, I wanted, when I went looking for challenges, within the municipality, I looked for colleagues who were working on some suitable program, some program dealing with some marginalized group, and that I knew would have resources to implement the tech solution if they liked it. If the pilot was successful, they would be able to continue with this tech solution. That was one of my criteria when selecting challenges. And I talked to many different colleagues at different departments, like the health departments and some social departments, and the sports department, and all kinds of different. I talked to many departments and colleagues to find suitable challenges, and that is not so easy because many people who work with marginalized groups do not find it hard to think of suitable issues for tech solutions. and which is not so strange because I think many social issues are not so easy to are not easily solved by tech. But I had to talk to them and try to find issues that might be solved partially by tech. So that took a lot of just talking to people, and I also put some announcements in our internal newsletter or things like that. And I also there's also in Amsterdam kind of newspaper, a monthly newspaper that goes to everyone in the city, to all homes in the city. And I gave some examples of what we did in the first 2 rounds, and I asked people if they had any ideas for the next rounds. And I talked to many organizations, associations, NGOs in Amsterdam to ask whether they had any issue that they thought might be possible to partly solve with a tech solution. So I did many different things to find these challenges. Oh, and then one is very important as well. In Amsterdam, we also have a challenge that we call a wild card. And for that one, I didn't define any specific topic, but I just said that we wanted any tech solution for any issue of any marginalized group. And people who applied had to show in their application form that they had contact with the group that they wanted to work with, and that they would work with them to co-create this solution. And for our last open call, which just was published on the 10th of September, we also included such a wildcard, but now it's specifically AI. So now we're looking for any AI solution to any issue of any marginalized group. And in that way, groups who I did not think of or I did not reach can still have a chance to let us know that they may have an issue that could be solved by tech, and they can try to get the grant.
So what I'm hearing then is you reached out to the community and researched marginalized groups and areas where they would have some kind of challenge, a problem, let's say, or an opportunity that could be realized through some technology. And that would form your call for challenges, where you have this kind of open call, anybody can apply, that fits within what you researched. And then you have this wild card category where it's not based on your pre-research. It's just somebody out there has an idea how technology can be applied to a particular group, and they have connection to that group. And then you can just assess it as just this wild card, just this new idea. And you're looking for NGOs that definitely have some kind of connection to a group, have the ability to deliver to that group. And so beyond the pilot, that there's sustainability of that solution. So you're looking for those kind of parameters. So it's not just a one-off, but it could be a sustained application of the technology. And due to the rapid rise of artificial intelligence, you're now targeting on this last one, AI. Is there some kind of application of AI that could be applied to address opportunity for a marginalized group or solve some kind of problem, maybe systemic within that marginalized group, or that's a challenge for that marginalized group? Did I miss anything in that kind of review of what you're saying?
No, I think you're explaining it correctly. Yes.
Okay, I mean, that's really, really fascinating. That would be really, really interesting. So are you going to do a documentary of the results of this 2023 to 2025? Have you applied to the National Geographic and Netflix, the Disney Channel, these different, global media groups? And
No, I have not. No, I have not.
it could be like a tech talk for TED. I mean, or
yeah, so I don't know. Well, I didn't didn't think about that yet. And I don't, I mean, a documentary, well, it's too late now, I think. But it's, I think maybe it's good if I give some examples of pilots we did, because otherwise it's maybe a bit vague. For example, in the last open call, so not the one that we just opened, but in the one before, I found one of the challenges by talking to a woman who runs an organization for hearing impaired, and she, I talked to her and said, "Do you know if anything that might be solved, any issue that might be solved by tech?" And she had a few ideas, and she then put a poll on Facebook to ask people in her community what idea they like best. And the one they picked was that when in public transport, often there's often what is it called? There's a kind of broadcast of messages by the driver or the one who checks the tickets, when they might, for example, say, "Sorry, you all have to get out of this tram because there is a technical problem or so." And she said, because I'm hearing impaired, I cannot hear this, and it's quite stressful and annoying if you see people start to move around you, you don't know why, and you don't know what's going on. So she said it would be nice if what's being broadcast can also be communicated to people who are hearing impaired first. And that was one of the challenges of our second open call. And I really like that. And we, a tech party applied that in pilot they created a rather clear solution, which is a microphone catches what's being said through this broadcast system, and they convert it to written text that you can read on your phone. And so this is, I think, a very clear example of how tech can help and solve an issue for a particular group. And in one of the wildcards that we had in the first open call, for that we did there was a pilot project by an organization that wanted to make quality news websites more accessible for people who do not read so easily. And this pilot, they developed a tech application that can be put on a website, and that simplifies the text of an article. And so that was another one that I liked. And what was nice is that they at the start of the pilot, they thought they would just have to simplify or explain sentences. But then by talking to people who are not so good at reading, they found out that it would be much better if they converted the whole text in a simpler language, and that they needed headlines to help, or actually they structured the text along questions that helped people who cannot read so well much better to understand the text. And well, and what else? I can go on. We did already, I think, 10 pilots, and I'm quite happy with to see what you can do with technology. But I must say, it is what's still an issue, of course, is the price. It's not so easy to fund all these solutions. So you can think of many ways that tech could help solve an issue of a particular group, but then to find money to scale up the solution is not so easy. And I think because of that, it's a good thing to work together with different cities, because if other cities decide or see a solution and they think they could use this as well, then it will maybe become they'll become easier to implement it, because you can put the funds together from many different cities. And so I think that, but that is quite an issue in some cases, that And I think in some cases, I have been doing some pilots, of which I think, well, maybe it would be great if we could do it on a much larger scale, maybe EU-wide at some point. But that's not something I can really work on now, but that's something that I keep in mind, that towards the end of the projects, I think we should try to find ways of scaling up the solutions that we like best.
I mean, I would say that, let's say your group made an application to do a TED talk at TED, the big one, the ones in Vancouver, right? The global, do a TED talk at TED. I'm just kind of brainstorming with you, or, go to National Geographic or, Netflix or whatever to do a documentary, but the documentary would be on existing projects that have already completed. And then you could actually see the implementation of it. You could see the results. You could talk to the people who are benefiting from it. You could talk to somebody who has a hearing difficulty and how it's improved their lives, or people who have difficulty reading and how this has improved their ability to consume different kind of news items. The advantage here is then you could see the result and talk to people who are beneficiaries of
That's
this.
true. Yeah.
And you're aiming to run 100 of these projects by
Yes.
the time it's completed. So you'll have a lot
Yes.
that you
would
could
be good.
showcase.
That's
So
true.
is there a website then that people can go to and they can look at some of these projects?
Yes, of course. But I think if it's possible to put it somewhere in writing in the video, it would be best, because it's a not so easy name. It is Community. Sorry. Okay, it's Community, and then line project. Oh, I cannot even read it. Sorry.
So I got an idea. If you
Okay.
could submit an updated profile,
Yes.
and in the updated profile, you can provide a link to the website.
Yes, I will.
In fact, in your updated profile, you can provide any other links you wish, by the way.
Okay.
You could provide one to the innovation department in Amsterdam, to Community.
Yes.
You could provide a link to the documentary if it still exists, the one you did before.
Yes.
So yeah, you can add anything you wish.
Okay.
So make sure you do that right after the interview is completed.
Okay.
And so that's interesting. Is there any other examples that you can think of? Maybe
the pilots. I think maybe it's also nice to talk a little bit about the pilots, about the challenges that we just published, because I think, for example, we have again this wildcard that I explained, this time the AI wildcard, but we are also doing, we also have a challenge on, which is supposed to be kind of AI interpreter app that can be, of course, there are already some interpretation apps like Google Translate or so, but we want to be able to use this for kind of sensitive situations. And the department I'm working with is part of the health department, but it's about domestic violence, and they say they could really use some interpreter app, but it has to be very privacy safe, and they want to be able to, if someone calls them, to quickly have a way to translate it. And also when they visit homes, they often have to deal with people whose language they do not speak. So they are looking for an AI interpreter app or some tool that is very privacy safe, and that's also that's the main thing actually for this one, that it's really privacy safe, and that's one of them. And we also have a challenge on dementia, because there in the Netherlands and probably in all other countries there are already quite a lot of tools that people can use to, for example, train their memory. But the ones that we have are not suitable for people with a migration background, or maybe depending a bit on which migration background they have. But for example, people with a Moroccan migration background cannot use these tools because there are a lot of cultural things in it that for them are not recognizable, or that. And so so one of the challenges is to create some tech tool to help people with a Moroccan background who have dementia or beginning dementia to train themselves and stay fit and to train their memory. And that's one. And we have more. Oh yes, we are also working with a homeless organization, and this challenge is not by the municipality itself, but by the homelessness the organization that works with them. And they work with volunteers that kind of buddy system. They connect volunteers to their clients, but not all of them have phones, and they're looking for some tech solution to let the buddies and the volunteers let them stay in touch with the clients of this homelessness organization, and that they can somehow stay in touch without having a phone. And it may be very simple, but to have some sort of connection for them, or maybe a possibility to let the other know that they need help, or just that they're thinking of each other, or something like that. So that's also an interesting one, I think. And I really wonder what proposals we'll receive. Oh yes, and there's also one, the University of Utrecht for Applied Arts. They have a group of students with autism, the ASS, and they created a challenge. They formulated a challenge that they would like a kind of personalized calendar that also contains AI, that because they say we often make mistakes in planning, in the sense that we overload ourselves, and we would like some kind of self-learning calendar that proposes to maybe reshuffle things in my schedule a bit in order to prevent me from getting overloaded. And I think this challenge was created by students with autism, but I can imagine that people without autism might be interested in it as well. So, and that's one of the things we learned too, that because scaling up is quite difficult, it's also good to look for solutions that may not serve only one group, but may also be interesting for another group. So, for example, this one, this pilot that we did for hearing impaired, it can also be useful for tourists who are traveling by public transport and do not understand what's being said through the broadcast system. And of course, we create the solutions for and with a specific group, but once you have done that, it can be interesting to think of other groups who would also benefit of the same solution, or maybe a slightly modified solution. Yeah. And I was thinking what you said about a TED Talk or a documentary, that would actually be very good, because I also realized during this project, these 2 years, it's in 22 it started. So in these years that I've been working on this project, I also realized that there is actually quite a lot going on. Quite a lot of people are working on tech innovations for all sorts of groups, but that it's hard to know of each other. So you need to spread the word very much. Once you have developed something that you think can be useful for a specific group, it's important to make sure that the people who could benefit of this solution, this tech solution, also actually know that it exists. And that is not so easy, and communication is very important. So a TED Talk or a documentary would actually be very welcome, I think.
I mean, that's really, really fascinating. You know, you gave some really practical examples of projects already were piloted, and then ones challenges that are upcoming, which is really, really interesting. And do you work in partnership with foundations and things like that as well, and corporations?
Not now in these EU projects, but I think afterwards, when we want to scale up the solutions, we will need to. I mean, as I said at the beginning, that when I looked for challenges within the municipality, I wanted to find colleagues, departments that would have a possibility to actually implement the solution. And but still, I mean, although they have some money, sometimes the solution turns out to be more expensive than I expected, and it wouldn't make sense to develop it just for a small, just for one city. But it would make sense if you can do it for more cities, for example. And so I think that we will have to look for other ways of, or for additional funding for the solutions that we like best, for the pilots that we like best. I think we will have to look for a way of scaling up and finding funding.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I mean, I'm just thinking that this would apply to the CSR programs within the big corporations like Microsoft or Google or IBM, Salesforce. I mean, there's so many of them, and you know, just make application to see if there's some kind of way to work with them. And there's UN, different UN programs as well. Have you tried some of the UN programs out there at all, or?
Not yet, no.
Yeah, I'm just kind of brainstorming with you of different parties out there that would be interested, because you're helping marginalized groups, right? Underserved groups, basically. And you got practical solutions. They have tech embedded. So that would fit, I think, some of the UN mandates, and then also some of the mandates of big corporations who are trying to also do community development in a meaningful way. You know, it's really, really fascinating what you outlined. And then, as you mentioned, your project completes in 2025, and then you'll get assigned to manage another project. So it sounds like this is your dream job.
Yeah, I am really happy to be working on this. Yes, it's true. And I would like to find some way of creating a follow-up or a new project based on the, for example, the best results of these pilots that we did, or also on the findings that we did, like that we found out that there is quite a bit going on, but you need to make sure people know about it. That's also something I would be interested in working on after this project. And also, I would really like to scale up some of the solutions to an EU level. I think it would be really nice if I could manage to, well, if some of the solutions that we thought of within this project will later be normal all over the EU. For example, this kind of AI interpreter functionality, I think all countries in the EU could use it very well, not just for working with, I mean, we did one pilot that was with asylum seekers, but there are so many other departments, and for the entire healthcare system, it's useful to have such a privacy safe AI interpreter. And I think it would be good if it would be very nice if out of this project we created some solutions that will be used on a large scale later in the EU.
Yeah, and then the dissemination of the information would be useful throughout the world, right? I mean, North America, South America, Africa, Asia.
Yes.
And I mean, I would suggest maybe trying to get in contact with the World Economic Forum to see if this could be showcased in some way with the upcoming World Economic Forum in Davos, and put a spotlight on the work.
Yeah, that would be nice. Very nice.
And then different UN agencies as well, right? And like the ITU and the AI for Good, this would fit some of the things that they're doing. And just you would have the ability to do outreach because you have a senior position in this program. And so just by reaching out, I'm sure they would be interested to hear more. So that's really, really quite fascinating. And so now we're down to the last few minutes of our interview. Is there any area that we haven't talked about that you kind of want to bring to the table here in our discussion?
And well, I mean, I'm really enthusiastic about this project, and I really see a lot of possibilities for tech solutions for all kinds of groups who are not so well off in society. And I think it's really important to work on this and to foster it actively, because I think otherwise there is a risk of the divide between people who are well off and people who are not so well off will increase, because people who develop tech solutions may look mostly at as a target group at people who are already well off. So I think it is important to foster actively the development of tech solutions for people who are not so well off. But I think it's also always important to keep in mind when you try to develop tech solutions that you should also always think about whether tech is the solution. So I think it is something to at the start of a project, you should always think about this, whether you really want to do a tech project, or whether maybe it would be better to use your money in a different way. And I think it's really important to think of the ethical aspects and the privacy aspects and things like that. So I think that is something very important in projects like these. And we stress in the project that solutions need to be co-created, that we think it's very important that from the beginning you involve the people you want this solution to work for, and that you involve them in all stages. And we noticed in the project in the beginning, in the first open call especially, that we hadn't stressed that enough, and that not all people who develop tech have the same perception of co-creation. And that some people think, for example, that if you have a user test at the end, well, I mean, maybe an interview at the beginning, that is enough. But we noticed in this, well, we knew from the start, but we didn't stress it well enough, that we really saw in this project that really co-creating solutions with the people you make them for leads to better solutions. So I think that's something that not everyone is aware of enough yet. So I think I'm glad that we are also promoting this idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a remarkable program. They should do an extension, community city version 2, or community city renewed, or community city squared, or something like that. So part 2, it's an amazing program, definitely having impact. And as you're mentioning, you're co-creating with marginalized groups, so they feel involved, right? They're engaged. So it's not imposing something. You're working in partnership with the marginalized or underserved groups. So this is down to our last question. And the question is formulated this way. Do you have a recommendation you want to leave the audience, or questions you want to leave the audience?
Well, what we talked about before, I think it is really a big issue, that communicating about solutions that have been developed. And I do not really know a good solution for that yet. So I would be really happy if people have ideas and and we can combine, like bring together the good solutions that have already been developed, and find a way of making it easier for people to know what good solutions exist already, and also how we can bring groups, for example, in different countries or so together, so that if there's a solution that would maybe be too expensive to develop for one group in one country, maybe it becomes possible if you create the same solution for groups across different countries. So I think these two things, we already talked about it, but I think these two are really important issues that have not been solved and will stay difficult. And so I would be really glad if people have good ideas how to upskill and fund such technologies and how to communicate about them and make sure that people who could benefit of them know that they exist.
Well, those are great recommendations to the audience. I mean, Neeltje, thank you for coming in and sharing this remarkable career or journey you're on. And we talked about this, where you went to this international school and that kind of opened your eyes about diversity and different points of view, and how you studied media philosophy and sociology and ended up as an analyst at ING and consulting, and then but also getting back to your roots with the Dutch public channel and producing a documentary, iPad Schools, but then their dream job with project management, Department of Innovation. And this then became the EU, European Union Project Community City, and you gave some great examples of how it's being utilized in your call for challenges, and then you gave recommendations of how to get the word out and do more sharing and collaboration globally. So thank you for sharing your journey with us and my audience.
Well, thank you very much for doing this interview. We'll see you again sometime.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.